Are you recording now?
Yeah, we're recording. Yeah, it turns out that YouTube used to do Google Hangouts, which made it really easy to do podcasts and live chats, but now they've completely stopped doing that, so it's a bit of a nightmare to get podcasts together, unfortunately. But anyway, Here we are.
They don't make it easier. They only make it more difficult.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah, you combine that.
What have you been up to?
You combine that with a new YouTube algorithm.
Yeah.
I think they're literally like, I don't know. They're probably trying to stifle people to a certain extent. That's why they make it more difficult and they adjust the algorithm.
Yeah, I don't know what it is really. I think really what they're trying to do is create better quality.
Yeah, they want to, I think, to be more like an official, like almost like a TV platform. You know what I mean?
Where people more professional. I think one of the issues that YouTube get is they get a lot of stick, obviously, because anyone can upload stuff and anyone can do live chat. So I suppose if they actually build a system whereby, if you're going to do a live show, it's got to be pretty professional. I mean, there's a lot of news channels now, and really professional people using YouTube Live. So maybe they just thought, look, let's kind of focus our efforts on the people that are actually earning us a lot of money rather than Lewis and Luke from DHS that do a podcast now and again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But we're not big enough. I don't think we're big enough right now to worry about it too much. But
Well, I think this is something I was sort of talking about on. I was saying things like large YouTube channels and this, that, and the other, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of glad we don't have a large YouTube channel because I think the Nutritional Balancing program is quite a sacred thing, and I think one of the things that could happen if the YouTube channel was quite big was that we would get seriously censored, or we would just get unnecessary, like, one thing I've noticed is as we've grown to 5,000 subscribers, you start getting some crazy people messaging you, and I just think, man, imagine what that's like 20, 30, 50, 100, like, this is enough for me. Like, I don't want any more crazies messaging me. Like, I've got enough things to do in the daytime than like deal with stuff like that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, people in the YouTube comment section. A lot of the people on the internet are just super like anti-Semitic. For some reason, like internet culture, I don't know. At least here in America, a lot of people, they spend too much time on the internet, and then before you know it, they like. People that are more exposed more to like conspiracy theories, and they kind of go too far down they just go into it too far, and then they end up thinking like things that aren't true because they went like, just because it's a conspiracy, it's going to be both ways. Just because it's a conspiracy doesn't mean that that's also the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I usually find it from a lot of sort of really evangelical Christians.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that are just too, they've been brainwashed into this idea, which is understandable, and at the end of the day, it's built around fear, really, when you think about it. Do you know what I mean? You will go to hell if you don't believe Jesus Christ died for your sins. That is huge fear, and if you buy into that,
and you know what? Right. Yeah. And can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, another weird thing is like those actual people, when you're around them in real life, a lot of those like super Christian people, they have entities in them. And you can feel the entities. Especially, with the evangelical, like in real life, I would say with the super Christian types, like what you're describing, like the people, like some people in the comment section have it too. Obviously, it's like young guys under 30, and then older women.
Yeah, it's, I think
It's-
it's just one of them things that you just got to cast to one side because, they're quite adamant, sort of getting quite aggressive, and calling you out as if you're like the devil, and it's like,
yeah,
what planet
exactly.
are you from? But at the same time, it's like, you know, well, probably one of the reasons why they're watching our YouTube videos is because God is trying to tell them the truth.
Yeah, my grandmother is actually kind of like that. You know what I mean?
Mm,
There's actual, and
mm,
older women, especially as they like 60, 70, the ones that like, especially, it's a lot of the time it's the ones that like weren't good, like they weren't very good people when they were young, and they kind of know it, and
mm,
they feel resentful toward, they've like, they feel resentful towards themselves for how they were when they were young, and then they find Christianity, and they go from one extreme to the other, and then it ends up being like that's like their redemption. You know what I mean? I see
mm,
it especially in like older women, like 50 or 60, and a lot of them, they have entities. I can feel them. It's like I call it like the Jezebel spirit. It's like a nasty, it's like a feminine sort of spirit that like it pretends it's Christian, and it like, but it's the root. It's like an ego base at the very. It's not like to do good in the world. It's because I'm right and you're wrong, so you're going to hell, sort of thing.
mm.
You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's this crazy sort of, I mean, think about it from this perspective. You know, God created humans without their consent, right? No consent involved. So I'm now a sovereign spiritual being, and that this is what the evangelical Christians think.
Mm-hmm.
So no consent, come here, no consent, and now I'm told I must believe in this very specific thing that doesn't really make any sense, and none of the other religions believe in it. And if I don't believe in this thing that doesn't make sense and is not backed up by the more recent, very credible channels of Jesus from things like the Way of Mastery, Jesus Speaks. It's not backed up by these really credible new things. So basically, if I don't believe in this very specific thing that I'm going to get cast to hell, I mean, think about it. Don't make me in the first. If that makes, do you understand what I mean? Like, that's a really nasty, cruel thing to do.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And the whole health thing, a lot of it is just a lot of Christianity is fear based, and so you're scared of going to hell, and that's why you become or try to be a good person because you're scared. But then that fear is always in the back of your mind, and it's
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
if
That
you
was
if you
apparent.
realize if you realize the soul's going on, then life is much more relaxing. The body,
True.
yeah, the body is in a much more relaxed state if the soul realizes that it's going to go on after this life.
Mm.
You know.
And it makes more sense. I mean, think about it. Like, like it's only humans that get cast into hell. What about all the souls in plants and animals? What about
Yeah.
souls on other planets? Do you honestly think that we're the only being in this universe? What about all the other souls on the other planets?
Yeah.
And then what about past life experiences? Are we just going to cast all the monks, all the amazing monks out? We're going to cast them into hell?
Yeah. Everyone goes to hell except for me.
Uncontacted tribes. Currently there's around 100 uncontacted tribes still on the earth. They're all going to hell. Like, stop talking rubbish.
Right.
Like, as Dr. Wilson says on his articles, if you look at early Christianity, if you look at the lost teachings of James, his brother, who was really close to Jesus, then Jesus was a prophet. Jesus realized, Jesus understood reincarnation, all this sort of stuff, and if one really good way of controlling a population is basically telling them that you've got to believe in this person, or that died for your sins, or you will get sent into hell. And on the other side of the coin, you tell everyone that there is such a thing as hell,
Right.
that you're going to go to if you don't do a certain thing. And with them two things, if you're living in an environment with no technology, no internet, no one's got access to each other, that's an amazing way of controlling someone.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to find a way to get my webcam back more like yours, but I'll have to toy with it some other time.
Yeah, I've got Yeah, I had a bit of a problem. I bought a brand new XPS, and the webcam is actually on the bottom of the screen. So I've had to like raise up my laptop a little bit, and kind of, instead of it being 90 degrees, it's like that. So the webcam's point showing outwards.
Oh, right. yeah.
It works pretty well.
Right.
Anyway, what you been up to? I hadn't spoke to you for a while. How's the kid?
The child as well.
Yeah.
My nickname for him is Lump.
Right.
Because he's just,
Why? Well, I
he's
can imagine why.
Yeah, he's a baby. But yeah, he's a cute baby, as most babies are.
Yeah.
How
is it to do the program with children?
It's definitely more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's challenging doing it by yourself, and it's even more challenging doing it when you're in a relationship. So adding kids into that situation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more difficult. But no, you can, if you do it like as a family, you can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And relaxing. And just relaxing about it, like, I think too many people like want to do the program perfect all the time, and like, relaxing about it too. Like if you miss an enema or you miss your supplements or something, like it's not a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean it depends. It depends on your reference point to how much you do in the program or not.
Right.
Doing the I'd say that's pretty good.
Right.
It depends on a lot of things. I mean, and like in an interesting situation whereby when you're ill, all you want to do is get better, and then when you get better, you expect to live this life, whatever life that you had going off in your head. But now I've got my health back. I'm starting to realize actually now I'm not going to be living the life that I was initially fantasizing in my head. Actually it's this life of development and realizing that got another 20 years work, which is a bit of an ego breakdown.
Right. Wait, what is that brick behind you? Is that wallpaper? Or is that actual brick?
Wallpaper.
Oh, okay. I was like, is there an actual brick behind it? Why is there a brick wall? Dude, do you have a brick wall in your house?
No. Well, this is my kitchen. I wanted to decorate it a little bit, and it's got a nice urban vibe in here. So I thought, well, if I put a brickwork there, and I can kind of use it for backgrounds for videos and stuff. And a lot of people use the brick background for videos. So I thought, it's I may as well follow suit.
Right.
I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Definitely.
Yeah, it looks good for sure. Yeah, speaking to like a lot of the comments that we get on the YouTube channel nowadays and everything. There's so much information out there. Discernment is very, very important because the internet. A lot of people, people today, they mistake the internet for truth. You know, the internet is not truth. There's plenty of lies on the internet.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Because one get infinite amounts of information, so out there's going to be some truth, but not everything's truth, of course.
Right, and that's why we get a lot of these comments. Like a lot of I see a lot of the anti-Semitic stuff today, and like random like Telegram chats too. A lot of people think that the reason why the world is so fucked is because the Jews are behind everything. It's kind of frightening how many people think that on the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've been seeing little bits of that. It's. I usually say to people, especially living in the Western world, there's a lot to complain about, but at the same time, there's a lot to be grateful about. I mean, we had Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day was yesterday or the day before, and I was thinking, like, that was literally 60 years back. 80 years ago. We was literally in a world war with.
Oh, is Remembrance Day like it's kind of like our Veterans Day? It's like where you like remember like World War II.
Yeah, so we remember all the veterans and stuff from World War II.
Yeah.
That's literally been this week, and you think to yourself, like, shit, like that was literally 80 years ago. There's a lot to be grateful for, and I think that's definitely a part of development, is realizing that, like, for me anyway, and for you, like, we can live where we want, we can pretty much do what we want, we can marry who we want, we can pray to whoever we want. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
In many ways, it's really enlightening. The problem with that is that there's no real structure anymore. There's no religious sort of structure. There's no, when you've got so much freedom, which in a sense we have. I mean, yeah, you've got to pay your taxes and stuff, but apart from that, we can do what we want. Right. But I think that's the problem, is that there's so much freedom. There's so much sort of do what you want, within certain rules, that there's no longer any structure anymore.
Yeah, people today, they need structure. They really do. Structure is extremely lacking in our society today.
Yeah, completely. And it's the whole idea of the yin and yang balance. It's so yin today, and what does yin represent? It does represent,
right.
Dilution, chaos, expansion,
right.
open space. Which is kind of what we've got on one level, but you go to yin, it obviously becomes toxic. Sort of implodes in on itself. It's a toxic feminism movement. I had a lot of backlash in a recent video I did on YouTube because I mentioned the word feminism, and I mentioned how toxic. Well, maybe I should have used the word toxic, but I mentioned how modern day feminism was really not helping things, especially for men's mental health. Because the toxic feminist movement these days basically blanket all guys into one category, and it means that a lot of people are sort of not standing up for themselves. A lot of people sort of go along with this toxic femininity, and then as soon as actually someone stands out and calls it out and calls bullshit on it, then that people just get offended because they're underneath this umbrella with, So for anyone that's watching this who got offended, I'm not going to apologise, but because there definitely is something, that's going off at the moment, which is really toxic. It's not like the suffragettes. It's, you know what I mean? It's really not healthy. It's too yin, and it gets to a point where these people who are wanting to promote sort of being free and, liberation actually start becoming more masculine. The toxic feminist movement actually ends up becoming more masculine. like the women become more male and the male become more female. And that's so funny to see if you go out to the extremes, it kind of comes back in on itself in really toxic ways.
Right. Yeah, and part of it is also, I do believe that the bodies are probably the sickest they've ever been.
Yeah, and that's another thing. People don't realize that just by healing the body, the mind and the brain and the body just start working as they should do. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know for me, especially doing the program and eating meat, I just became more masculine. And people are like, if people are so sick, it's got to a point where people are actually questioning what is masculinity and what is femininity. And I would say to people, well, just get your body healthy and you'll feel it. Do you understand what I mean? Like, you'll feel it. Like, it's just something that, like, naturally, erects itself from giving the body exactly what it needs, like what it's designed to eat. That's basically it.
And interestingly enough, most of the women that I've met in person in real life that have hormonal imbalances are vegetarian.
Yeah, for sure. And
so, it's not like just like meat makes you more masculine. Meat can also make you more feminine if you're a female. Because it's very nutrient dense. You need nutrients.
Yeah, and I think anything that's heavily promoted mainstream should always be questioned. And veganism's one of them right now, and I think there's a reason behind it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's similar to, like, even the anti-Semitic stuff is similar to the vegan. I do think that, a lot of them that I interact with are like, I don't know if they pay like click farms or they're like software programs that give automated responses. But I've run across like several, I don't know, paid informants or either that or it's like software, and certain subjects like are more common than others. Because I get used to it on the crypto.
Well, I think maybe you're thinking it's software, but people are so bloody robotic these days that it will probably just be a human sat behind a desk.
Yeah, well, it could be, like humans that are being paid, but like the responses are like they're all very like similar, and they're similar to like, so when I go on Telegram, like there's like spam bots, and then like some like so and like being in the cryptocurrency forums too, like you can tell like some of like when there's like so a lot of them are bots, and like they make accounts, and then the accounts are like automated, like they're like pictures of like pretty women or whatever, and then they give like they automate like the spam, they automatically spam the Telegram group because it's a bot. And I actually think like some of the people like you come across, like not so much on YouTube, like the comment section, but like Reddit especially, there's Reddit bots for sure that they try to swing at Reddit opinion in certain ways. That's why like if you go onto like our politics on Reddit, like a lot of their responses, like you can tell that they're bots and then they push an agenda and try to sway like internet forum behavior in a certain way.
Yeah, that's happening now because in England we've got a new general election coming up on December the 12th.
Right.
And every time one of the candidates posts something on Facebook, you check the comments, and they all look like canned responses a lot of the time from various things.
Right.
We're going through an interesting process at the moment here in the UK with Brexit. I feel like the left might win the general election.
Yeah. I mean, electronic voting is very dangerous. I don't know what it's like in England, but I would recommend avoiding all electronic voting.
Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, the powers that be probably didn't want Donald Trump to be, president, and the powers that be probably didn't want the UK to vote to come out of the European Union. So, I think the polls actually work. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's an issue there, because the powers that be now are really wanting to get us back in the European Union. There's no question about it. So if we voted out, I don't think it's electric in the UK. humans. It's a paper tick box and it's human verified.
Yeah, that's best. That's best.
And the way that we work, I don't know if it's in the UK, in the US, but basically local schools become polling stations. So the people checking the polls are like school teachers and stuff. That they're not part of the conspiracy, if that makes sense. So they kind of check it. They check it, and it's written down properly and stuff. There's a lot of people checking over it. I think you can't scam it. Unlike if you was doing electronically based, that's way more easier to obviously override and scam. But I think here in the UK, I'm pretty sure all the school teachers are not in on the huge conspiracy.
Right. Yeah, hopefully England does not go left, because that would not be. Hopefully Brexit happens. I think that Brexit will happen.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be a real.
I think it will probably happen.
It's gonna be a real kick in the bollocks to democracy, really, on one level, But on another level, it's a difficult conversation. I mean, it's a conversation that's been coming up huge at the moment. I mean, although I do believe it's best to be sovereign and be out of the European Union, on another level, I think, I find it hard that it's literally a yes or no to come out of something that's so incredibly complex. Do you understand what I mean? Like, I don't understand the complexities of what it would be like out of the European Union, what it would be like in, if that makes sense. I feel like if people are going to vote, they need some information on what they're actually voting for, if that makes sense.
From my research and from my understanding of the European Union, it's really designed to favor the Germany, in my opinion. The way the trade deals are structured, and the way the central the way the interest rates are decided, most of the financial decisions are made by Germany, and Germany controls the ECB, the European Central Bank. It's mostly controlled by Germany. I think that the EU is mostly just it's not all bad, obviously, but it is. I don't think it favors certain members of the European Union. I don't think it favors England or Ireland, or the two main benefactors of the EU, in my opinion, are probably France and Germany. Number 1, Germany, and then number 2, France.
Well, France is trying to come out of the European Union as well.
Yeah, which they should.
So,
because even with France, it mostly favors Germany. Germany's the main one that wants the EU because they reap all Germany the benefits.
I was thinking the other day, right? Germany started both world wars, World War I and World War II. How were they still? Why was that country not conquered after World War II and be like, look, you cannot run yourself? Do you understand what I mean? I don't understand why they're still independent. After causing 2 world wars, surely you've got to be like, right, you are not governing your own country. This is ridiculous. What is do you understand what I mean? The chaos that they you know what I mean? How is, I don't understand how that is possible. It's like, right, okay, you get back to running your own country again. What is all that about?
I mean, from my understanding of World War I, it was a little more complicated. The beginning.
Well, I understand, but World War II was not as complicated as World War I.
Yeah.
Right. You're not governing your own country. We are. We've won the World War. We've conquered Germany. It's part of whatever.
Yeah. That's why, it's important to remember World War II, because World War II is the last major war that really made sense. You know what I mean? It's like Vietnam, especially here in America, Vietnam and the Iraqi War, all those, those didn't make as much sense. So World War II was the last real war that actually made sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, it didn't make sense. I mean, the idea of going to war from Germany was totally illogical.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just mean from a framework.
The people that lost their lives
Right.
genuinely did it to save the country.
Yeah, like it was black and white. It's like good versus evil. It made sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From teamwork. Yeah.
Basically, joining the army now is just
Right.
a ticket to play someone's stupid game, and you know the tickets potentially got a death wish on it. It's just
and it's important to remember like why we died, why World War II was important, because there's a defeat. People talk about they call, like, especially here in America, the leftists, they call like conservatives like fascists. But no, to World War II, we went to war against fascism.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
America
this is the
never. America and like Britain, that's about like individual liberty and like going to war against the communists and the fascists. You know what I mean?
I think politically at the moment we're in such a mess, and I think it's another way of mind control is to get. I mean, obviously politics is extremely important, but to get people's minds away from their own family, away from their own self, away from their own health, away from their own community. Do you know what I mean? And constantly looking out here, constantly looking towards the government to help them, or constantly looking towards the government to sort them out. And while the individual is ill, while the individual is not looking after themselves, while the individual is mourning about the fact that they're stuck in some sort of job that I appreciate some people can't get out of, but there is opportunities to try and come out of it, try and build your own sort of businesses. And even if you can't come out of your work, like, concentrate on your family, concentrate on your friends, concentrate on your own household. Like, do you understand what I mean? Like, it's all out there. It's all what's going off on the news, what's going off in politics. Of course, keep up with all that sort of stuff, but it's to a point now where people do not even look like around what's going off around themselves or within themselves. And really, that's where the transformation comes. Do you understand what I mean? Like, you can fight for 70, 80, 90 years, however long you're going to be on this planet. You can fight for whatever, but at the end of the day, the real reason why you're here is to transcend, is to develop, is to enlighten yourself. And to do that, you've got to focus on yourself, like, the vast majority of the time. So it's this balance that you got to try and find. But at the end of the day, like, you're never going to find any sort of balance if you don't stop focusing on all of this shit that's going off out there. Yeah, focus on it, but you've really got to focus on yourself. That's where the transformation comes.
Yeah, and self-awareness is the single most important trait you can have, because everything else stems from self-awareness.
Being self-aware is super important, but being self-aware and having the tools to, rebuild the awareness that's been broken down, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but I know people that are self-aware, but then they'll do something that's really harmful, like a fruitarian diet or something like that, and you're like, I can see that you're aware that you want to change something, but it's all right having self-awareness, but if you've got poor logic and poor common sense, then you can have all the self-awareness in the world.
Well, you have to be aware. Awareness is also in your body, and so if you're aware of your body, you would notice how a fruitarian diet made you feel, and then you would stop it.
No, that's a fair point. But there's a lot of propaganda out there as well. I mean, don't worry, you're just enlightening yourself. You're just becoming more spiritual. Do you know what I mean? You're becoming more etheric.
Yeah, and the problem is that a lot of people, they get too up in their own heads, especially with the internet and social media. They're too in their own heads, and there's not enough energy and self-awareness in the body. So instead of reading, thousands of vegan articles about how it's the best thing that you could ever do, if you bring the awareness back to your body and you see how it makes you feel, that's far more important. You know what I mean? And so it's discernment. You have to bring energy back to your body.
It is, yeah. I mean, I do feel for people. It is challenging. I mean, take nutritional balancing, for example. I mean, when you're going through a healing reaction, I mean, that's if you can be self-aware of your body, and you can be like, this is not good, like, this is, And so you've got to have the knowledge. There's a lot of factors involved, isn't there? There's self-awareness, there's knowledge, there's common sense, logic. I mean, I never became a vegan or vegetarian or fruitarian, even when I was super, super ill, just because it didn't make it. Just common sense was like the thing that made sense to me back then, which I tried, was the paleo diet, which makes sense on paper. It's like, all right, let's go back to our ancestors, past cavemen, see what they ate, which is an omnivore diet, vegetables and a bit of fruit and some meat and nuts and all that sort of stuff like that. That it does make sense. There's some logic there and common sense, But then you realise, the yin and the yang, and this is toxic, and the fact that our bodies are really toxic these days, so you can't really compare yourself to the past. You've got to sort of do all these detoxification methods because we're not. You understand what I mean? You've got to do it. So I can see where people go from in terms of doing some diets which are more common sense, but some are just like when did we ever just eat fruit? Like when did we ever eat raw? Like when did we ever just eat meat, or when did we ever just eat vegetables? Like we've never done that.
Yeah. And also like the fruitarian thing, for me, it also makes it's way less sense. Like if you're a white person, dude, why are you white, dude? Because you grew up, because your ancestors were in Northern Europe, where there's not a growing season, where you would never have access to fruit. If you're in Northern Europe, you might have access to fruit like some berries 3 months out of the year. Like you can't. Like you're in Norway, dude. They didn't have mangoes. They didn't have mangoes in Norway. What the hell are you talking about?
And a lot of people don't realise that the fruit that we've got these days are so hybridised that they're just big fat balls of sugar. They're not natural whatsoever. The natural apple is about the size of a walnut. It comes from Kazakhstan, and the natural pineapple is about the size of your thumb. You're not eating anything natural, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? You're just eating these sort of sugar bombs and stuff. But there's a big, veganism. I've been thinking a lot about veganism recently, and I wrote an article and stuff, and I've been thinking about doing a video. And one glazing, forget all of the arguments on veganism. One clear, massive problem is there is no multi-generational culture that has just been fully vegan. Like we do not know what it's going to do to our kids or our grandkids, and
well, we do know, dude. You can go. People document.
Well, we do know there's people, and there's parents that have been in prison because of the brain didn't develop properly. So it's like, how can you push this rhetoric so much when there's just there is, there's clear evidence, but there's no studies, there's no data, there's no cultures, there's nothing. Yet apparently, being a vegan and vegetarian, veganism is like 5% of the population now in the UK. Like pretty much every restaurant or cafe you go into has a vegan menu now, and I'm like, how are you doing this? This is dangerous.
Right. Well, it's also an agenda. It's an agenda by the powers that be to weaken the people.
Yeah, and everything that's truthful. I mean, how can you make hair analysis illegal in New York?
Yeah.
What? Do you understand what I mean? What is all that about? That is the most insane thing I've ever heard. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, New York and San Francisco. Those are the two craziest places in America.
Yeah, and what you if you want to know what's truthful and what's not truthful, just have a look at what's illegal and what's legal, in general.
Specifically in New York and San Francisco.
Well, there's a war on supplements now. Countries are literally not wanting supplements to come into the countries. Look at Endomet. I mean, we can't ship supplements. We can't ship glandulars that have been processed. All the documentation. What is all that about? It's absolutely insane. There's a war on supplements. Just think about it. There's a war on the things that build a human. Do you understand what I mean? There's war on vitamin. There's a war on vitamins and minerals, the building blocks of a human being.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, excuse me, what is all that about?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Right. Um, you know, and that speaks to, I think it's important that you're aware. I don't want to go too much into economics, but I think it's important that people are aware of the situation of Western nations. And I don't think like most people, I don't think understand how much like debt we're in and how the debt can't be repaid.
No, no, for sure, for sure. And it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out over the next few years.
Yeah.
Um,
You know.
it's a challenge. It's a challenging one. I mean, it's what. How do you find the balance? I mean, in the UK now, you know, it's hard to live if I'm being honest. Like the rent is just incredibly
It's insane.
high.
It's insane.
Food is incredibly expensive. If you want to eat good quality food, I mean, my flat alone, this flat that I live in now, just a small two-bedroom flat, nothing fancy. If I was living here by myself, it would cost me around £700 per month to rent, gas, electric, water, Wi-Fi connection. I think the minimum wage in the UK full time, you get like £1,100 per month. So that would leave me. I mean, and I'm not in a fancy flat, just a normal flat. You need this space for one individual. That would leave me £400 for transport, food, car insurance, anything that breaks down, like going out, buying clothes, utility. Does you understand what I mean? Like,
Right.
so there's a big problem with not imbalance, just sort of. It's healthy what we got going off with the idea of competition and being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, there's so much debt that the government's just trying to rape you as much as possible when it comes to taxes
Yeah.
and rent and all that sort of stuff, because there's so much debt to pay off, and it just comes straight back down to the common person.
Yeah, and people have to realize we're at the end game. Like with the debt, it can't go really much. It can't the debt can't last much longer. It's exponential. You know what I mean? And so people have to understand that government services will be massively cut back. If you're dependent like on welfare or you're dependent on the government anyway, I think it's going to be a difficult time.
And that's it's one of the ideas of being self-responsible. It's like, be responsible for your health. I mean, if you're responsible for your health, I mean, I haven't been to the doctors in 8 years.
Right.
I went a few months back, and really it was just, a lot of it was to test the doctor on certain things. I asked him about EMF sensitivity and all this sort of stuff. And that's it. I mean, look after your health. I mean, my grandparents at the moment, unfortunately, my grandma, she doesn't listen to my health advice, and she's, the government must spend tens of thousands per year, because of the propaganda that people think that the medical system is going to save them from all these ailments, and they're not. So it's this weird kind of crazy world we live in today, whereby all the pharmaceuticals are just trying to make as much money as possible, and then in England, with the free healthcare, they're just paying these pharmaceutical companies like tens and tens of thousands of pounds per person, and that's where all the cuts are coming from. Because the government, with the NHS, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one level, it's quite nice to have free healthcare. On another level, it's so expensive. They're paying the pharmaceutical companies are just like throwing bills for like, sometimes £600 for insulin and stuff per month, and it's just this crazy world we live in.
Yeah, the Western world needs to go back to its roots. 100 years ago, America was the healthiest nation on earth because they had no medical licensing laws. And America was designed to not have income tax, no property tax, and no licensing laws. And that's a very different world than what we live in currently. Things like the property tax is unconstitutional. Our monetary system is unconstitutional. Um, even free speech has become borderline. It's worse in Europe, especially places like Sweden. Sweden, Germany, dude, they will throw you in jail if you say racist things online. The police will literally come to your house in some of those European nations, and they will knock on your door, and then they will take you to jail for something you posted online. Especially Sweden and Germany.
Yes, Sweden's the worst.
Yeah, Sweden's the worst. And this is, the reality that we live in. But the answer is going back to our roots. It's not more of the same or more government or any of that. It's going back, and people don't realize how it used to be, how different it used to be. Here in America, for the first 100 years, there were no taxes. Basically, all the income used to fund the federal government came from tariffs. That's it.
Yeah.
And so if you bought something from Europe or something, it just cost a little bit more, but your income was not taxed, your property wasn't taxed, and there were no licensing laws. Here in America, like in California where I live, you have to have a license to cut people's hair. You have to have a hair cutting license.
Oh, I do get worried a little bit about the work that we do. I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some crackdown soon on natural health practitioners. There's got to be. Not there's got to be. They do not want. And unfortunately for us is that you do get some people talking absolute rubbish on YouTube and stuff, and it just gives weight for these licensing laws to come in, and just be like, right, look at Google at the moment with anti-cancer, anti-vaccination. Someone's basically told them you need to stop allowing people like Dr. McCullough, Dr. Axe, Dr. Wilson to be taking these top spots when it comes to cancer treatment, vaccine injuries, all that sort of stuff. And that's if it's happening on the internet, it's probably going to happen on the ground as well at some point, where it's going to be like, right, all these alternative health practitioners, it's illegal to go and see these people because they pseudoscience. Do you know what I mean? They have not got any medical training, all this sort of stuff. And, it wouldn't surprise me if I'm out of a job in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's why, in a lot of ways, you shouldn't fear the reset. And in my opinion, the best way to really change the status quo of how it is a major monetary event, a reset, where people can't get into their bank accounts and shit. You know what I mean? That's what society, I do think it needs a shakeup.
Where do you think this is going then with the whole cryptocurrency sort of stuff? Let's get into that a little bit, because obviously I'm into cryptocurrency. I've actually stopped investing in cryptocurrency just because of all the volatility and stuff. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I've put a lot into crypto. Like, if I'd have saved them thousands that I put into crypto, I would probably have the same amount now that I've got in crypto, if that makes sense.
Right. I don't want to speak too much about cryptos because this is the Deep Healing Space channel.
Well, this is a podcast. We're just chatting, so I think it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's two scenarios. If you look at 2008, typically before a crisis, there's massive deflation, where basically you want to have cash to actually at least live like 6 months, because everything goes down. Like in 2008, all assets, because there's a flight to cash, because that's the safe haven, right? So the U.S. dollar is still, for the most part, it's liquid and it's the safe haven. So in 2008, gold crashed, silver crashed, real estate crashed, stocks crashed. And in that scenario, there's a good chance that crypto, I don't know how crypto will react, but I think there's a reasonable chance that it'll act like gold and silver and all assets, and it'll crash, and everything will even flee crypto into the dollar, and everything will flow to the dollar. After that happened in 2008, obviously they reinflated. The central bank started printing massive amounts of money, and then everything went up, especially gold and silver. Okay. That's one scenario. Another scenario is that we just go right into hyperinflation. Either way, we're going to go into hyperinflation. The first choice is that there's massive deflation first, and then the central banks choose to print a bunch of money, and we see massive inflation. Or we just go, they see like deflation on the horizon, and they just pump it beforehand, right? And they print a bunch of money. Both way, this ends with a bunch of money printing. Okay, and there's lots of inflation.
Who printed a load of money recently? Was it the UK or the US? Just a lot of money just got minted randomly.
Well, here in America, we have a problem with what's called the repo market, which so banks like do overnight lending to each other, and then there was a liquidity crisis where some of the banks, like the biggest banks in the U.S., weren't lending to each other overnight, and so they were getting margin called on their overnight contracts, and then the Federal Reserve basically print a bunch of money, but they don't even print it. Nowadays it's just they put another zero on the ledger on their computer. You know what I mean? It's not like they're actually printing money on a printing machine nowadays. It's just they go into the Federal Reserve admin console and just they add another digit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it works nowadays. But either way, we're gonna see central banks almost always choose to print a bunch of money as the system implodes. So it'll be massive inflation. Groceries will continue to go up. Rent prices will go up. Everything will go up. So you want to try to have at least some assets that keep up with inflation, which typically gold and silver keep up with inflation in that scenario. And you don't want to hold a lot of cash. You only want to hold enough cash, I think, to survive like the first deflation if it happens. But
when do you think the next one's going to come? I mean, it's been saying every year, it's like next year. It's the same with crypto. It's like it's going to happen next year. It's a little bit like listening to the climate people.
Yeah. I mean, some sort of restructuring does to happen because it is math. I mean, there is another scenario, I suppose, where they have the system so controlled that they just keep printing a bunch of money. We all get poorer and poorer until eventually we live in like some sort of nightmarish, where we're all watched at all times, sort of Big Brother scenario, and everyone's, for the most part, there's no middle class, and like if you say the wrong thing, they put you in jail. I mean, and it's some kind of like dystopian nightmare like that. That's a more than 0% possibility. But I think what will happen, what's kind of planned, is just the system will, for the most part, implode. And maybe they could be able to control it and implode in stages. But there's really no other way to go forward. Like, what else are you gonna do? You have to pull the plug and move to something different. Cryptocurrencies are something different, like fundamentally wise, it is programmable money, which has many use cases. I'm most bullish. I made a video. You guys can check it out. His name's Digital Dave. I made an interview 3 days ago, and why I think about Bitcoin Cash is what I'm most bullish on.
Yeah.
It's peer-to-peer digital cash.
I just think these people that own so much of the wealth just will not let it happen one way or another. I just can't. Do you understand what I mean? I just cannot see it. There's too small of a percentage that own way too much of the wealth to just allow it to happen. I mean, I don't know how you would stop it per se, but
dude, you won't.
You just ban the exchanges would be a good way of doing it.
I mean, that's just the way of the world. I mean, I'm sure if cryptocurrencies go up, the richest people are going to own a lot of them, and they're going to still be rich, and they still own most of the real estate, and real estate will always have value. So, most of like the big people, like a lot of the big people like Rothschilds and stuff, they keep most of their wealth in real estate. Because real estate's not going to go anywhere. So, I don't think there's really any solution to like there's always going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, going to a cryptocurrency system would drastically improve it because it's deflationary, and so they can't get all their wealth into Bitcoin. It's impossible. It'll go up in price too much. You can only, put so much into it before it goes up and up because it can absorb any amount of capital you put into it. You know what I mean? That would have been definitely an improvement upon like the monetary power structure, in my opinion. I think there's a chance in the U.S. we move to some sort of blockchain gold-based currency. That's probably the best solution. Or you do a basket of commodities, similar to what Veritasium is doing. If you were to have a new, the U.S. government, and this is true for England as well, at any time they can print new currency that's backed by gold or silver. So the answer might be in parallel, you have gold certificates at the same time while you still have the old U.S. dollar. They could do that in England too. But it's going to take some sort of new system to transition through. And I've been thinking a lot about, like the end times. I think like that. And I do think more and more, I think we're in the end times. I think we're actually coming out of the end times, like Dr. Wilson writes about. And so this sort of like shakeup, I think people like get really scared of it. But I think it's probably something to celebrate because it means.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say earlier. In early on, like there's a lot to celebrate about. Like, yeah, what's going off now? There's a really interesting woman called Barbara Hubbard who talks about the next sort of stage of consciousness, and the way that she said it's like at the moment, it's obviously the world is fractal, and the human race at the moment it's as if they're giving birth. They're in like the channel, birthing channel. It's hard work. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of push, there's a lot of strain, there's a lot of pressure. Do you know what I mean? But after a while, we'll have a new birth into a different way of living, which is much more enlightened on one level.
Right, and I think that the reason why I think that the end times is different than people thought it would be, maybe like when you read the Bible and stuff. That's why I think some people can focus sometimes too much on Bible prophecy, but I think we're in the end times, and the end times is just the health of the bodies today, and it's like people don't realize how sick their body probably is, and like there's just like in America too, so many people are on antidepressants. It's crazy. There's so many people that live in like literally like it's a psychological hell. And a shakeup of the system, like for instance, like America would be better off. Like say there was like a market collapse, like we're talking about. A lot of people wouldn't be able to afford antidepressants, and that would suck. It would suck for a lot of people, and it'd be very, very difficult. But at the same time, you'd be forced to come together with your family. Life would become a little bit more like community based because at least to a certain point, like your life's more difficult in some ways. You don't have access to your medication that maybe it'd be difficult. You get withdrawals, right? And so a shakeup, I think, is actually really needed for.
Well,
and don't fear it. Don't fear it because we're already. If we're in the end times, it can't get any worse. Like the bodies are already the sickest they've ever been, and so to fear it is like I think it's a fool's errand.
Yeah. And it's like when you read a lot about wars and stuff, it takes a war to actually start bringing people together again and start caring about each other, start giving a crap about each other. And there's actually studies, well not studies, basically in the world wars and in wars, in the psych wards, in the psychiatric wards, what you actually found is people would come out of the psychiatric wards to basically go and help, to be part of the community, to go and fight, to help the family. And what you found is that after the war, they would actually go back into the psychiatric wards because they didn't feel like they was useful anymore. And there's been a lot of reports of people who said in many ways they kind of missed the war, not in a sort of sadistic way, but in
Right.
a way that everyone was pulled together, everyone cared about each other, everyone took notice of each other on the street, everyone made sure that everyone was okay. Whereas if you haven't got, without that, that's the dilution comes again. And
I think, yeah, I think the world, especially Western society, it needs that. It needs that.
yeah, and
It's not going to be a war, but a similar.
well, in many ways, be grateful for that, because it's not a war. Like, a war is terrible. Like, people die, millions of people die. Like,
Right.
this is going to be some sort of financial collapse, or
Right.
I don't know what sort of collapse is going to happen, whereby it's going to be different, whereby you're not going to be your life's not going to be as endangered probably as what it would have been in the war.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't know about you, but I can feel it. Like, I feel like I am actually sort of, I can sort of feel it in a sense whereby I'm trying to build community. I'm trying to be part of my family. I'm trying to, because you realise that you're on a hamster wheel a lot of the time. You're trying to save the world or do these giant things, and in reality, the truth is actually where you are around yourself. So if you start preparing now, like, there's no way 8 years ago I could be in a position where I've got a business, where I'm helping people on YouTube, where I've got a web design business, where I only work 5 hours a day. Like, the reason why I'm there is because I've, in a way, prepared for it. I didn't know what the end result was going to be, but I've prepared for it by healing myself. And now everyone's got an opportunity. This is what I mean. Grab the opportunity while you can. Invest in things that could be highly profitable in the future. Invest in your health. Invest in the people around you. Make sure your family and friends are looked after, because you'll be the one that'll be prospering in the end times, and everyone else will be feeling like they've just fallen off a sunken, they're on a sunken ship.
Yeah, but we are moving to. I think we are coming out of the end times, and this shakeup is like the end of. It's going to be better afterwards. I think Earth is upgrading, basically, and the collapse of the old system is necessary for this. It's not going to be perfect, obviously. And you talked about like the rich people. Like, the rich people are still going to have most of the money and stuff like that, but it's going to be and it's these cycles take a long time. So we're just at the beginning of the cycle, and so it's not going to be utopia all of a sudden, but it's going to be better.
Sure.
I think it's going to
be. Look at the breakdown of the paedophilia rings and stuff that are opening up now. Look at Jeffrey Epstein's case. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's not perfect, but these people, Jimmy Savile, like, it's still slowly starting to unbreak. It's slowly starting to unwind itself. Like, you can't hide anymore, and that's part of this new vibration that we're moving into.
Right. The intensity of Pizzagate, though, is going to break a lot of people psychologically. Pizzagate is very, very intense.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And again, it's preparing yourself. I mean, I knew about this sort of stuff a long time ago. I was 10 years ago. I was getting into this sort of stuff. Like, I knew about Jimmy Savile. I know about various different things, Princess Diana, all this sort of stuff. And it's like now all this stuff's coming out. I mean, our local council, like, there's been a huge rape investigation in our local child in our local council in Rotherham. Is huge. It was like a nationwide issue, and it's like, that doesn't shock me. Like, in a way, I'm prepared for it, and it's about using your common sense, using the opportunity you've got now to sort of build a good structure. It's like some of my friends going through spiritual experiences, going through enlightening experiences, and thinking that they're by themselves, and then they speak to me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what? I'm like, that's nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're like, whoa, how do you know this stuff? How have you? And it's like, because you sort of not prepare, but you realise the sort of crap that's going off, and deal with it. Like,
and I do think I can feel it, like, as we go through this transition, the father energy is starting to come back a little bit to Earth. I think that a lot of people are going to come back to Christianity a lot more in the Western worlds.
I've noticed that as well. I've noticed that just around the friends that I'm hanging around with, because you can't run away from the truth. This is the thing. Like, I'll see my friends get into relationships, and I know what's going to happen, and I'm there picking up the pieces. And by me standing there saying, well, yeah, but this person thinks like this and acts like this, and do you not realize that the way that they're thinking is not healthy? It's not truthful, and they're like, oh shit,
Right.
yeah, I
Right.
didn't realize that. And then you say, well, if you had a Christian mindset, then this is what
Right.
would happen, and this is why it's better than that. Do you understand what I mean? And it's like, oh man, yeah, I'm totally getting that. So I'm definitely seeing that you
Right.
just can't run away from truth. That's the sort of, and that's the good thing about doing nutrition balancing or praying, is that like you're living truth, like you're swimming in the stream of truth, like you're protected on one level already. You don't really need to do much apart from just stick to the path.
Right. And the culture in America and I think the Western world is starting to shift a little bit towards more Christianity in the fall. Dude, a good example in America is honestly Kanye West.
Yeah.
Dude, have you read the YouTube comments on his videos, his new videos? Have you read all the comments?
Not read the comments.
Dude, if you're watching this, go read the comments. It's literally just thousands of comments of people like saying that they went to church for the first time because of Kanye.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's little signs like I think that the culture is shifting.
Hmm.
And the father energy is coming back.
Yeah. It's nice to see on one level. Well, on one level, things are getting, things, especially in the UK, things things are pretty bad on one level.
Well, I think it's gonna be both. The father energy coming back, I think, is in some ways it's even a catalyst for the destruction of the old systems. You know what I mean?
And it's important for anyone watching this that understands what we're sort of talking about, is to try and lead by example, try and be that father energy, because you're not going to get everyone on your side, but when the truth actually reveals itself, that's when people turn around and like, oh,
right.
He was right, like he was telling the truth back then. And
Right.
that's something that happens in my life, is that I'll say stuff and I'll do stuff and I'll act a certain way that kind of triggers people.
Right.
And then a few months down the line, they'll have some sort of experience where they realize, oh, actually, like what he was saying was right. So I understand that we're a soul, we're not a human body, and go out there and speak the truth, and don't be attached to people's responses too much, because it's all a game at the end of the day. It's all just a bit of fun on one level. Don't be serious about this life, because it's fleeting. So just go out there, speak the truth, and you'll get respect. It'll come back to you in ways that you just don't really imagine.
Do you ever tune to people's entities and try to pull them out of them?
No. Well, I definitely tune into people's entities, but I don't particularly try and pull it out of them, especially if they come across as if they don't want to be helped. I'm just like, whatever. Then you've got to learn the hard way. There's no point in me intervening in this, because I'll probably be doing you a disservice on one level, because you need more lessons.
Right. Yeah. It's going back to like like the father energy coming back and like all these. Like, I do think that it's a catalyst for the change we're gonna see, and we should celebrate a change in the system. All these institutions are evil. Like the college system, it needs to go bankrupt. The medical system needs to go bankrupt. The monetary system needs to go bankrupt. The Catholic Church needs to go bankrupt. Like these institutions, like, so to fear the breakdown of our institutions, like in reality, we should be it should be a celebration, like a cleansing. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a celebration if you've looked after yourself. I mean, you're not going to be celebrating if you're reliant on the medical system.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to be celebrating if you're reliant on the Catholic Church to keep you sane. And this is it's all coming back to sovereignty, individual sovereignty, and it's one of the reasons why I promote coming out of the European Union, is because it's one step closer to sovereignty. Like, it's not about being racist. It's not about wanting to separate like us against them. It's like, no, it's like individuality, individual sovereignty, individual cultures, and like it's a little bit like the ecosystem of the earth. Like, different plant species, like, they thrive in certain areas, and that's just how God's created it. And like, just what I mean. And it's similar to countries, in my opinion. Like,
right.
But that's the problem. As soon as you say, I think we should come out of the European Union, you just get classed as racist. It's like, come on, man.
How's that even racist, though? Like, most of the European nations are white nations.
Well, no, we want to come out of the European Union. It's like, oh, well, you're racist because that's going to, like, close down the border more for immigration.
Yeah, and people don't realize.
At the moment, the link between, we've got open borders and stuff.
Right.
Fairly open borders between us and France and us and Spain and sort of, and it's you say to people, okay, well, let's be an individual country, come out of the European Union, and they just instantly think that you're just trying to stop immigrants coming into the country. And it's like, well, it's not a good thing, but that's not the point.
Yeah, and it's not a skin color thing, it's a cultural thing. And the culture, and Sweden, when Sweden and Germany will they're learning this lesson currently, but especially in Sweden, like, if you read reports, like, in some of their, like, the like in Malmo, where most of the Islamic immigrants are, in Sweden, they have there's explosions every day. Like, people literally, like, in Sweden, like, they have there's like Islamic gangs, and they just throw grenades at each other in the street. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so,
and then you get locked up for retaliating.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they'll learn their lesson when because most of those people, they actually moved to Sweden and Germany partially because a lot of them, like, they just live off the welfare system. It's like socialized medicine and everything. And so when that dries up, all of a sudden you're going to have a couple million military-age Islamic men in your nation, and they all of a sudden their welfare dries up. Then what? Well,
Okay, I think again it all comes back to individual responsibility. It's even with whoever gets put in to being president or the government, of course it's important, but it all stems back to the individual. It's even in America, like, do you know what I mean? Like, a few people are going to be up in arms about the fact that Donald Trump came into power. And in one way it's a good thing, but at the same time it's like, you've still got to sort yourself out, just deal with yourself.
Yeah,
I mean, like, it's such a simple thing, and I think it's if people actually just did that, it's like, just focus on yourself. But a lot of people are like, everyone knows that junk food's bad for you. I mean, that's not even hidden. Everyone knows junk food's bad for you, but yet people still do it. So, if you're living in a world whereby people just think like that, then that's even more weight to just focus on yourself, because the world's not going to change to how you want it to be anytime soon. And even if the world changed, this is what makes me laugh. Even if you woke up in the morning and the world outside yourself changed to exactly the fantasy you wanted it in your life, that's probably not going to change you as an individual. Like, you're still going to be sick. Do you know what I mean? You're still going to have family disconnection. You're still going to have all these problems. And it's like, even if the world was just this utopian, whatever you want it to be, Marxist, socialist world, if that's what you're into, you're still going to wake up in the morning with 24/7 brain fog.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And the world is only a manifestation of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's thought process and stuff. But anyway, I can't stay for too long, man, because got to shoot, got things to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Hey, if you're watching this, go check out some of the comment sections on YouTube on Kanye West's videos. See, maybe the culture is shifting.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Catch you soon.
All right, bye, guys.